Did you guys do we just got the box of all of her like childhood stuff. Did you guys do the like write to yourself when you graduate? The
Are-
shit that she was saying in it was hilarious.
Holy shit.
Like
I am the same person.
You know what I'm talking about? It was like you're in like 4th or 5th grade and they like prompt a bunch of questions and you write down.
You like write to your future self when you
Yeah.
graduate, and then you get the book back.
I think I did, but
I did.
now I
did.
don't remember if I did or not. Like,
They could have started that later.
did you find yours or try to?
It's probably somewhere. Or I was like, I'm not letting anybody see this, so I threw it out.
I did some book thing where there was a number of different poems.
That was like middle
Sure.
school, 8th grade English or something.
Yeah, but then I think there was one before that even. I think
Oh,
I did
was
it
there?
twice, like once in elementary school and once in middle school, but it wasn't like a letter to my future self.
We had to create a book, and it was like separate prompts of kind of like giving your personality, what do you like?
Mhm.
Then it was like, what do you have a
Yeah.
problem with
Okay.
your current school, and what do you see yourself doing, and whatever. And then they kept it, and then you would get it back senior year, which I don't remember getting it back. But I was
Yeah.
reading through
I don't
mine.
either.
I am the same person. Like, it went through like, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? What are your fears? My fears were snakes, spiders, and failure. Could you imagine?
As like a
6th
5th grade,
grader, I was
yeah.
like, okay,
Failure.
Lines
I
up.
really,
Lines up.
scared of it.
Yeah.
lines up.
Well, and there was one of them where you're like going off about junk food. And you're like, this is why America's so obese and blah, blah, blah. It's like, next time you want to go to McDonald's or Burger King, you should just think about going home, making something, or going to Subway.
Like,
It's Courtney
Subway's the
now,
healthier
just
option.
without a filter.
Without
She'd
a
have a little bit
filter.
more of a,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to be nice to your feelings filter about it now. But back in 4th grade, it's like, you're fat.
Yeah.
Stop that.
Yeah.
Shit.
Well, I just love how it's like, at that time, Subway was healthy.
Oh, I know.
So you're like,
And this is also at the time where I was eating fast food every single meal.
Yeah.
But because I
Yeah.
was dancing and I didn't look like it, I was like, well, I'm in the illusion of it's fine. And I ended the whole thing of like, it's not going to change unless you stop buying it. Like, we're the problem. Like,
Oh,
stop going to
right,
Taco Bell,
right.
otherwise they're going to keep
But
selling
you
it,
guys-
and then we're going to become obese.
And you two have talked about that before, about the, like, I thought I was healthy in high school because I looked fit and
Yep.
I worked out a lot. And
Yep.
I remember talking to Grandpa Yui one time where he was like, all we ate was meat and potatoes. And like, yeah, you could have drank diesel for every meal, Grandpa. You guys worked 90 hours. You know, and
Outside,
that's-
in the sun.
and that's your farm job. And then you go and work 40 hours at the factory. Like,
yeah.
you don't stop moving. You could eat whatever you wanted to at that point. You'd look healthy. Wouldn't necessarily mean you are healthy, but you'd look healthy.
Well, and
You know.
didn't he
Mhm.
have, he had at least one heart attack.
He had 2.
2 heart attacks.
The first one, I think, was a smaller one, and then the second one was when he had to have the triple bypass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Were you?
Meat, potatoes. Lard sandwiches.
Yeah.
I think it had a lot more to do with the milk straight from the cow, essentially,
Mhm.
and everything else that comes with that. Bread
Mhm.
with butter
Yeah.
lathered on top of it.
Yeah, I would almost say it's
all
more
the
the bread
cholesterol.
than it is the milk even. But yeah,
Sure,
it's
sure.
the
Well, and the switch to margarine later on, they did. They
and
did
that's what
margarine.
that's
Yeah.
almost what I think
A
what it
few
was is
years.
you have this fake chemical essentially that this is the healthy option. Like, no, it's literally a chemical that you're
Yeah.
putting in your body to be fake butter.
And I think Mom brings it up often. They are Depression era people, so
Yeah.
like they
Yeah.
saved everything. But man, if you can have 2 slices of bread with butter or margarine at dinner instead of just one like we used to,
Yeah.
they probably were indulging that way.
Yeah.
You know what I
Mm.
mean?
They're like, we're
Mhm.
living.
The same way that we do now, like the same way our body does it with the foods that we eat. Like, I'm gonna store sugar because I'll never know when I'm gonna get this again.
Yeah.
So we just store it for as long as possible. If
It's a
it's not burned
luxury.
up right away, it's a luxury. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that's what I heard somebody say it too recently, but how back in the day you could tell the wealthy people because they were overweight, and now you can tell the poor people, quote unquote, that they're overweight. And it's like food now that's bad for you is cheaper to get versus
Right.
the food that like we should be eating or
Right.
to be healthy. It's harder to consume. It's harder to get. We got apples from Walmart, and I'm sitting there for 10 minutes scraping off the wax.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, how much goddamn wax do you need to put on this
Yeah.
thing? I mean, 0 in my preference,
Yep.
but like,
And you're hoping it's
Yep.
wax.
But
oh
it's
yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's like
if it's just wax, that might be okay.
yeah,
And I'll wash
Not
them
as
and
bad.
be
Yeah.
okay with it. But if it's a bunch of other things too,
it's like
that
it's
are
just
sprayed on top
holding
of
in
it.
the pesticides and herbicides.
Yeah.
That's what the wax is
yeah,
doing.
but it looks pretty. The apple looks clean and pretty and nice and glistening and all of that. When you go down and pick a pear from mom's pear tree, it's gonna have bruises and
Yep.
blemishes and a
And
spot
dirt
where
on
a
it.
worm tried to eat part of it and whatever. And that's healthier, but it doesn't look good. So
No.
I don't want that one.
That's the whole reason why they started pasteurizing milk. Besides the safety of it, was because they didn't like that it started to separate and then it looked funky.
Right, you
It's
had
like-
the butter. You had the buttermilk on the top that would.
Yeah.
Oh, what is
Yeah.
that?
To where now it's like, oh, well, we didn't want people to have to shake it up themselves.
Yeah.
So that's
to
why-
mix it
Yeah.
evenly.
Like, okay.
When you said too,
well,
like they went to cartons for a while, so then people literally forgot what milk was supposed to look like,
Right,
of having the cream at the top
Right.
and then the separation stuff,
right.
and then they go to the plastic gallons and it's all nice and
Yep.
even. It's
Yep.
like
Which take your pick your poison. Do you want the weird wax covered cardboard carton that your milk is stored in, or the plastic container that your milk is stored in?
God,
I don't know which is going to be.
I don't know
Yeah.
either.
yeah,
Is there anybody that sells milk in a glass jar anymore?
I know.
I would love it. There was the grocery store that we were going to. Sometimes they would have it in a glass.
Texas, right?
Texas, yeah. Sometimes they would have it in a glass thing, but I mean, we're getting raw milk, but it's in a plastic jug.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there are some, I mean, just through what I've seen on social media, some people are distributing raw milk in the glass jugs that they kind of used to use,
Yeah.
which I think there's some things that we can turn the clock back on like that we would be fine with.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
we're not gonna, you're not gonna upset too many people if we take a step back and say, you know what, wasn't the right way to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
And glass and aluminum or the steel cups
The
a little bit,
steel.
but the glass I think is a big thing.
That's
Yeah.
one thing that it takes me down mentally, takes me down the path that Casey and I talk about all the time of like this. You kind of create your own community thing, and we've talked about like as far as our family, like how can we, as a family at least to start out with, do this kind of. It's not an HOA, but it's just this like, no, we're working together as 3 or 4 families to, and it gets you that idea of like, okay, you got 3 cows, I've got 20 chickens, 40 chickens, you've got a couple of goats or you've got some sheep and you just start doing that type of thing. You start thinking about those things more and more because you're like, well, all he has to worry about is cows and all they have to worry about is chickens and all they have to worry about is sheep or all they have to worry about is a garden,
Yeah.
and you can start to share those things. And then when you go to the grocery store, you're going for toilet paper,
Right.
or
Yeah.
paper towels, or more of those like, general consumer products. Whereas the milk and the eggs and bread,
Yep.
sourdough bread,
Yep.
one
Yeah.
person that's in charge of making 5-6 loaves of sourdough bread a week. Once you get in those rhythms, it might be a little bit boring, but then you're not going to the grocery store and spending $190 for a family of 3 or
Mhm.
2 or whatever for your week of groceries.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
working together as a tribe. That's how it used to be. And like what you're saying is, it's harder to eat healthy now because it is so expensive. To where the things that we should be eating and how we should be growing food and doing all that, like you have to put in more work to do that. To where if you can spread it out among your family, it's like
Right.
the raw milk. We're spending $15 a freaking gallon for
Right.
raw milk. To
And
where
I
some
think-
people, that's just what they had in
Yeah.
their backyard.
And I think
Yeah.
that's something that mom and dad kind of wanted to do out here was like, oh, we could have a couple dairy cows or we could have pigs that we slaughter and we can have chickens. And it's like, that all works great. But when it's 2 adults and 5 kids, you got to be very strict about the kids helping with chores, and you got to be
Mhm.
very. And they didn't ever want us to feel the burden, which I
Right.
appreciate. But at the same time, it made it much more difficult for them. Whereas if all you had to worry about was 3 or 4 dairy cows, it's 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
It's go out, muck the stall quick, throw in a fresh bed of
Yep.
hay, fresh bed of bedding and some hay, and you're done.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that crazy. But when you're trying to do all 17 things, now you've turned into a second job that you have at
Yeah.
home, and it makes it much more difficult.
It's so strange because it's a little tribal or we talked about a native kind of way of doing it. And I think we're in our culture or our country, we're so anxious to get out of the home and go and find ourselves and develop something or start a career or get more education or whatever that might be. And it's funny how many stories there are of immigrant families that come over here and they start out with the entire family, cousins and uncles, living inside of one home or one area and just sharing the wealth that they're able to build with their kids, with each other, and then they explode. And it's actually they explode in the sense where like they pass up some of the natural born citizens of this country, and they do it in a generation, or maybe sometimes faster. But it's also a way that I think we've gotten a little bit lost with it, because there is the idea of the American dream, and there seems to be so much land left available, and technically there is, but not in the way that is actually feasible for us, right? But these other countries, they still live that way, and they do it on purpose, where they keep everybody in the home essentially until they're ready to actually go out on their own. And that might be 25, that might be 22, but they're inside the home and they're sharing the wealth that they're able to create. And they're actually using that wealth to go like buy extravagant things too. That's the way they're able to afford like a Lamborghini, and everybody in the family seems to have a Lamborghini or whatever their pick is. But it's because they're all living in the same home, and all their income is going into one mortgage, and they have all this other income, and they're investing it in the ways that they want to. But it's just interesting how we don't want any part of that anymore. At least most of America wants no part of that. I want to lean on my family. And
build together.
And build together and let them lean on me. A lot of it has to be like, don't lean on me.
Right.
But if you need to lean on somebody, you have to be willing to let them, you have to shoulder the load for them sometimes.
It becomes very much it's as simple as it can be. It becomes about pride. I'm too proud to ask for help from somebody. And I struggle with that for sure, but it's also one of those things where it's like, no, your pride's getting in the way, because asking a family member that has the opportunity, has the ability to, if I were to ask Corey, hey, can I give you pay for the feed and pay for the actual chickens and get 10, butcher chickens available, just to butcher at the end of the year. Can I just throw them in the pen with your other chickens? He's like, yeah, once they're old enough, that's fine. It wouldn't be a hard or difficult thing for him to do. They're already feeding 20 chickens. They're already dealing with them. Like, adding 10 onto that is not a hard thing to do. But the pride starts going in where I'm going, whoa, maybe I'll just do it so that I don't have to ask for help from somebody. And it all falls down to this one of the 7 deadly sins of pride of, well, I can do it myself. And then you sit there and struggle the whole time and go, why can't I live the American dream? Well, because you're not using the tools and resources that are around you. That's what it comes down to.
Well, and I think I go to look at what we're told. Get out at 18, like go pave your own way as soon as you become an adult. And then it's like, what's all over social media, TV shows, movies is the dad's a doofus and doesn't know what he's doing and can't lead the family, and the kid needs to figure out his own way. And like the dad doesn't know what the world is anymore, so the kid has to have all the responsibility to know what the world is. And then the mom is doing who knows what now. It's
when
a
you
whole
like
bunch
to
of other
reject what
things.
your parents are teaching you.
Right. It's don't listen to your parents. They don't know what they're talking about. It's a different generation. It's a different, they're the boomers. They're this, they're that. Don't listen to them. Go pave your own way. You're 18 years old. You know what you're doing. It's like, you don't know what you're doing.
And
I'm
then you have all
26.
these
I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
18-year-olds that are lost and confused and are starting to feel that. And it's like, well, I wasn't set up correctly, or I don't have the guidance that I was supposed to. It's like, well, because you're a child, and that's okay. And it's okay to be confused, and it's okay to have to figure it out. But again, leaning on each other to be able to, like, we've talked about that a lot too, like not having that, whether it's pride or the stubborn mindset of, well, I'm going to figure it out, and I need to be the one to figure it out, and it's going to be different than what I was told. And anything that I was told as a kid, I need to show that I knew different. Versus like, hey, maybe they told you that because they have some knowledge.
Right.
Yeah, they've been through some stuff.
JD and I had that conversation a couple of years ago to a certain degree where I was like, the most frustrating part about getting older is realizing the cliche lines are always true.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying, and it's going to piss you off, but they're always true. Now, they're not going to be 100% every single time. There's going to be times where you're going to go, well, that didn't work. But you go back and look at all of the cliche lines of the, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Like, oh yeah, whatever. That's just what talented people say when they made it, and they think that they actually worked hard. And you're like, no, you get older and you realize, no, it actually does work that way. The problem is you're not persistent enough to follow through with it.
Yeah.
You just aren't persistent enough. We have a little bit of that, and again, to go into the cliche thing, but we have this, immediacy in our mentality of like, well, if I don't get it right away, why is it worth it? It's like, that's kind of the point, is if it's worth it, it's worth working for it. So be persistent with it.
Yeah.
And I think Casey and I have had a lot of conversations at work where I am losing my mind, ready to walk off the job, like I am done. And Casey will just go, yeah, that's how it goes. And I'm just like, shoot.
Yeah.
It is.
Like, this is what they were saying.
Like, this is, you've got to take it that one day, and you've got to say, this day sucked, and you've got to move on to the next day and keep with the mentality of, if I keep pushing, this will work out for me.
Yeah.
Because I have a good plan going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to do that.
No.
Nobody wants to do that.
And going back to my silly little 6th grade book to myself, like, that was a consistent theme. It was always work hard over everything. When it gets hard, push forward. This is going to be, like, you're going to choose a career. Like, even in my 6th grade thing, I was like, this is going to be your job. This is going to be your goals. These are what you're going to try to achieve. That's going to be weird. It's going to get different. People are going to push obstacles in your way. Don't quit.
Right.
By any means, do not quit and keep pushing forward. I think there's a little bit of a romanticizing of that, where it's like, well, you still got to have plans in place, and you still got to do the logistical aspect of it. But it is that, like, as soon as it gets tricky, we're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
This might be too crazy.
I can't think of a single thing in my life that was, quote unquote, a failure that I can't go, no, that was my fault. I didn't follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, there isn't a single thing in my life where I go, oh no, that was 100% that person's fault or somebody else's fault. Or it always goes down to, and maybe that's the mentality that I've created, in the last few years, but Casey and I have talked about it too. Like, one of the easiest ways to get rid of stress for me is to go, all of it's my fault.
Yeah,
because then that means I have control over it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
To a certain degree. I have at least some control over it, where, somebody ticked me off, somebody did something they shouldn't have done, or whatever it would be, and it's like, well, yeah, but that's my fault because I allowed them to do that, or I didn't prepare for that as being an opportunity or a situation that could have happened. I should have known better. That's my fault. And then all of a sudden it becomes this like, oh, I'm not worried about it anymore because I now know that I can change that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, and it allows you to, like, almost train yourself or learn how to prepare yourself for that same situation to happen again.
Right.
Or if not the same thing.
Or a
like,
similar
okay,
one.
something like this can be happening again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
I'm on board with the cliche thing. But some of them you have to look into, like, the root of the saying a little bit more.
100%.
Yeah.
Jack of all
Really?
trades.
The jack of all trades,
we did
man.
for
That's the one that
30
gets me all
years.
the time.
And
Jack of all trades, master of none is what our dad used to say. You could hear it in TV shows or movies. Everybody used to say this. And it's not what the original saying was. It was jack of all trades, master of one. You learn how to master one trait, and then you can become a jack in everything else. You learn how to master that, and you know how to teach yourself. You know how to learn how to do everything else that you need to around you. You learn how to farm, and you get really good at that, and you're going to be able to figure out how to work the machinery on the farm, and you're going to learn how to handle the animals on the farm, and it's the same thing with everything else.
Yeah.
And we, at least our generation or my family, we're kind of convinced, jack of all trades, but master of none, meaning, like, just learn a little bit of everything, you'll get by. And it's like, no.
Well,
the way to, like, we don't want to get by.
Well,
You want
to
you
excel.
want to excel.
Yep.
You want to jump ahead. You want to set the next generation up for da-da-da-da-da. Master something and then move along.
Yeah.
And I learned that way too late.
Well, and that's, because it's jack of all trades, master of none is still better than a master of one. I think is how that finishes. And it's like you said, like, yeah, master what you're doing and then keep finding the next thing to master.
Yeah, it
Sure.
doesn't mean stop.
And
either. Yeah.
and what's funny is I used to get frustrated with jobs that I would have because it'd be like 5-6 months in. And I'm like, there's nothing else I can learn here. Like, there's nothing else I can learn here. I used to think that was my detriment, was like, I'm not able to sit on an assembly line for the next 40 years of my life, or I'm not able to be a parts picker for the next 30 years of my life. I'm not able to do that. And it started to become a thing where, like, now I'm like, oh no, that's become an advantage to me. Like, as frustrating as it was for probably the people that I worked with or that I was around or whatever, where I was like, no, I need to move on to the next level. And if you're not going to provide for me in the next level, sorry. And that's one thing that I will say that, people give a lot of guff to, whether it's millennials or Gen Z or whatever, like, oh, now I'm not a fan of the quiet quitting trend that started where they just would walk out one day and never come back. That's different than
That's
yeah. Oh yeah, they called it quiet quitting for a while, where it was these people would just, I'm not going to give them a 2 weeks notice, or I'm not going to let anybody know, or I'm not going to whatever. That's just being selfish and kind of
And unprofessional.
And I mean, unprofessional, but also just like, no, you're just mean. Like,
Well,
That's like the ghosting things. Like, so you're doing it
Yeah.
in relationships and now you're going to do it at work?
yeah.
and I kind of think you're just a pussy.
Yes,
You don't want to
yes.
deal with
Yeah.
the hard
Like, you're just a coward.
confrontation.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I'm not opposed to
I mean, did
If-
I do that? Yes,
if
I
you've
did that
gotten
once.
yeah.
Okay, well, were you 16? That's
yeah.
Sorry, Woodmans.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I'm not opposed to the idea though of, like, if you've been in a job for a year and you don't see any movement forward or moving up or learning a new skill or learning something different and you're done, then move on to the next job, with the understanding of there comes downfalls with that, a new
Mhm.
schedule, a new regimen, a new whatever. But the older generations will talk about, like, nobody can put in 40 years anymore. It's like, well, you also don't have jobs like GM down in Janesville where you could put in 40 years, sit on the assembly line and kind of mess around most of the time and not do anything, and the union protected you and you made $20 an hour in 1987.
and you're getting a
Those
pension
jobs,
and you're getting
those
insurance.
jobs don't exist anymore, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people are going to move on to the next job. It's not about loyalty. It's about, you're not showing me any loyalty,
Mhm.
and I need to find my next passion or my next pursuit or my next path in life, and you're not providing me anything to move forward with. So I need to find that myself. I don't have a problem with that.
Could we dive into that? Like, because I feel like our work and come up is maybe different, but also similar. Like, what is your guys' relationship with work and career? Like, I always said my career is going to be 30 different jobs. I don't want my career to be one job. I
Did
want
you
it
talk
to
to her about our
build
conversation
upon
the other night?
I told her that this was something you brought up to me.
Oh yeah,
That-
that's
like,
a
what's your guys'
a
feelings
very-
on that?
it's a very pertinent conversation for me, because my fiance Mallory and I have had this conversation a couple of times, in that, and we actually just had it after you and I had the conversation again the other night of, for a long time you always heard the, like, do what makes you happy, you'll never work a day in your life. And we had a guy at our job just a few months ago make the comment of, he goes, I always hated that line, because the do what makes you happy, you'll never work a day in your life, that's because there's no jobs in that area.
Yeah.
It was kind of his joke, was like, yeah, you can't find work doing what makes you happy because there's no work there. Everybody's already got those jobs.
Yeah.
What makes you happy is probably going to be what somebody else finds happiness too, and it's not going to happen. But the conversation that Mallory and I have had a few times, and that I've started to realize that there's this disconnect between kind of the two different types of people, is I don't go to work to find fulfillment in my life. I go to work to provide for the fulfillment I want to find outside of work. Whereas there are a lot of people, and Mallory and I have talked about this a lot with her, where she actually finds fulfillment in her job a lot of times. The problem is that if you rely on it, sometimes that fulfillment doesn't happen. And then that ruins the next day and a half. You may not have the same mentality going in the next day to work because I don't feel fulfilled here, type of thing. And while I think that that's a good thing for certain professions, for sure, if you're a basketball player trying to play in the NBA and you don't find fulfillment from that, you're not going to make it. Like, you have to find fulfillment in the, I'm putting in 10 hours of actual training a day to do this. If you're not finding fulfillment out of that, you're probably not going to make it. Those guys are on a different level of, we are committed to this, and that's going to be, but they're also doing it with the understanding of, I've got, what is the NBA? 7 years is the average NBA, you know, NFL's 3 years,
yeah.
you know, like you're talking about jobs that are, you're making what you can make now, so you suck it up and do it.
Yeah.
And then when you see all these retired athletes or whatever, they get out of it and they go, I'm just going to go do what makes me happy. Some go into real estate, some buy restaurant chains, some do motivational speaking, some go back into coaching, where they're able to find that fulfillment somewhere different. But I've noticed that there's very much two different types of people in that. Like, some people have a career, and to them, career means I go to work, and from 9 to 5 or whatever, 8 to 4, it's I go punch in, and when I leave, I punch out, and it stays there.
Right.
And then there are people that bring it home because that's what they identify themselves as. I am this person. And I think I told you that. Like, I don't ever want somebody to identify me as, oh, he's a carpenter. No, I want them to identify me as, you know, one, Carey, he's a father or a brother or a husband or a, you know, son.
Yep.
That's how I want to be identified as.
My namesake.
My namesake, yes.
Like, yeah, that's how I would want to be remembered, is by my name. I mean,
My
yeah,
children
you could get to
are
a certain point where if you're Elon Musk and you're slapping your name on a rocket,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
can be remembered for the rocket,
Right.
and most likely that would be the case. But like, oh, that's Casey, or that's a passer, and they did this or they did that. That's how I want to be remembered. Yeah, the namesake essentially. But then, you know, what came with that?
Yeah. Well, and I think when you think of somebody or you hear somebody's name, you get a feeling.
Yep.
Like, that's what you're
Yep.
attaching to that name. It's like, we can all think of whatever about Elon Musk, and then you can kind of go wherever direction this is with him of like, I would say if you're a healthy person, Elon doesn't give a shit what we think of him. He cares what his kids do and what his kids feel when his name gets brought up and
Elon,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, Elon, in my opinion, Elon does not give a shit what you think of him at all. But he cares very deeply what you think of his projects and what he's actually able to accomplish. He cares very deeply about that.
Yeah.
And I was just going to, the thing about Elon that I remember is him launching his Roadster, trying to fly it to, I forget now, was he trying to hit Mars or was he trying to hit the sun with it? It was something. He was trying to
Launch it
flew
into
his
space.
his
His
first
car.
Roadster,
Yeah.
the Tesla Roadster, with the spacesuit in it, out of that rocket, and tried to hit, I forget what he was trying to hit, either Mars or the moon or the sun, and he missed it. But they had it live streaming as this thing is flying out of the atmosphere and into space.
And that's your first memory, like true, not
It's
your
not my
first memory, but it's
yeah,
like
I
what
obviously
really
knew
made an
of
impression
him.
on you.
Yeah, but that's what made the impression, is like, oh, so if there's going to be a guy that does it as a private company on his own, it's going to be this guy, right?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about in California, you talked about when he was trying to build that tunnel
Yeah,
In LA.
to do the
In it-
train,
the Boring Company.
to
Yeah.
like do the train underneath to connect
Well, I think it was 4 cars still.
car. Okay,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah.
And his whole idea was just like, I just wanted to see what this would do, and I'm kind of interested in trying this project, and I have the money to do it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, to be able to, like, that's what I would like, to have the ability to just stay curious with
Yes.
things.
Sure.
And like, oh, I want to test that out. Go for it. I want to try this type of career. Go for it. And I think the reason why I say not to have one, because I think there's plenty of people that's where they feel the safest, they succeed the best. Like my dad is, I'll stay in one career and that will feel solid to me. For me, I'm like, okay, but me at 20 versus me at 35, I'm going to want to do something different. I'm going to want to, like, I will have new tools to be able to provide to different jobs and things.
Well, and I think people get, I don't know what the word to describe it is. They get extremely connected to that. This is who I am.
Yeah.
Especially with the career thing, which is I think to a certain degree a detriment, because you have this then polarization of I am this, and then they get married or they are already married and they have they have a kid, or they move on
Or
to the next chapter.
retire.
Right. Or they move on to the next chapter of their actual personal lives, and they don't know how to compute that, oh, you're not really that person anymore. You may still have that job, but you're finding deeper meaning in something different, and it starts to just eat at them like, well, what am I? And I also think that's why people don't move on in their lives as well is, well, if I do that, then I'm no longer this person that I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable being this person.
Yeah.
If I change that, does it change everything about me? And am I okay with changing everything about me?
Yeah.
You know, if you'll see the whether it's the the professional athlete, you know, they talk about professional athletes that once they get done, they can't do anything else. The majority of them don't know what else to do with their lives, and they go broke within 2 or 3 years, and they don't know what to do.
Try to make a comeback. And
Or you see the female CEO that finally decides to have children, and she starts to have an issue of like, I'm supposed to be a mother, but I have so much obligation at my company here. Which one do I, I don't want to be just a mother. I don't want to be just that, but at the same time, I want to do both. And I think it's a little bit selfish to say I want to be both of something. I think it should be a priority to say I want to be this, and this is my priority right now. Everything else can be there, but it doesn't mean that it's my priority. And too many people try to make one thing their priority that really shouldn't be. If I'm going to become a father, that's my priority. You know, and I've joked with Mallory about that before, like, yep, I love you as much as I can possibly love you. As soon as we have kids, you're number 2. And I hate to say that. It sounds mean and sounds cruel, but you now become number 2.
Well, I think that's what you hear all the time too. Is like,
and a lot of people don't want to hear that. Yeah.
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 I think that moving on from the career or the whatever too, it's like that part of you dies.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't want to accept that, or they don't want to go through that. I think and that's what stops them from
It's change.
doing it. Or
it's just change. Yeah.
What is your guys' motivation to work? Like, we've been talking a lot about that with like investing and trading and all that. Like, there's a potential where I wouldn't need to provide income. And then it's like, well, you just have to do what is fun for you. I have never worked for fun. I've only worked for, I'm there to build money and to create that. That's like, okay, well, what do I like? What would I do just for fulfillment? That's like having that option, or to even have to think about that through that lens. I'm like, oh, I've not done anything for that. I've only done it for the money, which I think can be good. But I think people have different motivations for why they work or reasons why they work.
I used to say a lot when I was younger, and I probably have even said it in the last year or two, more in like a joking fashion, or like this is the way I used to think of things. But it was that I work to play. It's a simplified version of what Carey was just saying. I work to play. I work so that I can go and do what I want to do, whether that is actually playing or whether that's being productive in my own other way, building a family, buying a house, whatever that ends up being. But I've got a little bit, I don't know if it's come with other people that I'm starting to listen to, or if it's that I'm getting older, but I have a little bit different idea of what I want to work for now. And I don't know, I don't know if this is something that lots of people already think about, or families have instilled, but I want to look forward to the next couple of generations and be able to set them up in some way. I don't know what that looks like right now. And it doesn't have to be crazy, and it doesn't have to be like a huge dollar amount, but if it can be something that's, if it's a business that's up and running and it's, hand them the keys and say, I'm retired and you can do this if you want to. And even that takes me letting them get a little bit older and finding out what they're interested in doing and helping them just achieve that business so that I can walk away and hand it to them. Or if it's anything bigger than that, we'll see. But what I work for now is more like, okay, what can I set up down the road that's really going to help snowball things for my family and people that come after me. We hear a lot about generational wealth like fails within 3 generations. First generation builds it up, second generation plays with it, doesn't know what to do really with it, and the third generation has no idea what's going on at all, and they have to start from scratch if they even can. And I'd like to somehow, not that I'm going to be that first generation, but I'd like to somehow find the line within our family tree in some way and help somebody, help my kids, help our grandkids, whomever it might be, or anybody within the family, find that kind of success where there's generational wealth, where it's like, oh, okay, we can set people up for the future. And not to, I mean, we can get into this a little bit later, and not to bring up Elon Musk again, but like, I want my kid on that fucking rocket ship that's going to Mars. I want my grandson on Mars. I want my great 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 grandson traveling throughout space. Because I bring this up all the time. I don't know why it's not talked about every day, all the time, but this planet has an expiration date. That sun's going to blow up. That's over here now. That sun's going to blow up, and we have to get off this planet. We have to survive a lot of things before then, but we have to have the technology to be able to just live and travel in space, or find new places to live that are going to have a longer lifespan than this thing. And I don't know why that's not talked about all the time.
Well, and like, and then who's gonna get on the
Howard's
ships?
is talking about it.
Yeah, it is a little bit out there, and it's kind of like the death thing. Well, you could just talk about death all the time and what happens after that. Yeah, you could. I picked this one.
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
But I
it
think
is
there's a
the
little
fact that you can't just. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to.
Maybe that's
it's
it.
like when you learn that the sun is a star and stars blow up, you go, well,
yeah.
Now
and
what?
They're like, yeah, but it's this many billions of years from now, and you're like, okay,
Maybe.
But we also
right, according to
Maybe.
who?
yeah,
Don't see
we
tomorrow.
also need, and I think that kind of goes to the like, we also need to listen to some of the older people in our generations a lot more, because there's this, once people hit a certain age, there's this ease with which people go, all right, like they just, and it's hitting a little bit at home for me right now with me and my fiance, but that people get to a certain age and they just go, yeah, I'm ready. And nobody wants to talk about that. And that plays into what you're talking about as far as like, there is an end to everything that has begun to a certain degree, to get, philosophical.
There's a comedian that does a, sorry. It's Rogan.
Oh.
Rogan has a joke in one of his specials, one of the older ones, where he talks about that. And he talks about the Big Bang. He's like, I think I know what it is. He's like, I think a bunch of autistic guys got together and made a large hadron collider, and then they made a black hole button, and they figured out that it worked, and
they hit the button.
One day, one of those guys was like, yeah, I'll fucking do it. Boom! The whole Big Bang fucking happens.
Yeah. But it goes to the like, I mean, it kind of goes back full circle to the cliche thing of them being right or them being accurate, really, when you look at it. And like, some of the conversations I would have with Grandpa Yui, I'd sit there and be like, you're just not a smart person. And it's not to be mean to him, but it was like, he had a 4th grade education. He had to go back and work on the farm. But then you listen to him more and more, and you're like, you're not school smart, but you actually are a very smart person. Yeah.
He's intelligent. He's just not educated.
Right. You're a lived-in smart. You've lived it. You've experienced it. Like that, your knowledge comes from going out and doing it, type of thing. And it feels like we're losing those types of people left and right that actually have that kind of knowledge, where they're like, no, that's not how that works. That's not how any of that works. I don't know what you're trying to say. And it I don't know. It throws me for a loop a lot of times, where it's like, everybody wants to have this purpose in life. And what's so funny to me is the most rewarding purpose that I've ever seen anybody have is the Grandma Yui that we got annoyed with walking around with her massive tape recorder, videotaping every holiday. How does the food taste? Like, Grandma, can you get out of my face, please? I don't want to be on camera. To her, that was the most amazing thing, to have 50 people in a double wide modular home that were all created because of her and Grandpa Yui.
Yeah.
All of that was there because of her and Grandpa Yui.
And she got to document it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and she got to document it. Like, to her, that was as amazing as it could get. And I think about those things now, and I'm like, oh, that is amazing. It's amazing to have the thought of, like, not only can I have children, they can have children, and their significant others, and they're, like,
Mhm.
you can affect, like, very dramatically affect the lives of 50, 100 people, whatever it might be, in your lifetime in a very personal and intimate way. And there's so many people that want to go, no, I just want to have my job over here, or my career over here, because I want to feel fulfilled from that. I don't know how it gets more fulfilling than having a family and having that type of
Mhm.
lineage brought down. Whether you are an Elon Musk, or whether you are a grandma passer that she had 3 kids, they had their children, her grandchildren, and she was able to leave them not with some immense wealth, but I can help you. Even
Mhm.
after I'm gone, I can help you with your lives.
Mhm.
That to me is what is, I can't imagine anything more fulfilling than that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just,
Yeah.
I may not be here, but you can still feel my presence in that I'm able to help you with your lives, whatever that life may be. If it's monetary way, if you're leaving a massive amount of wealth, or if it's knowledge, obviously Dad wasn't able to leave us with wealth, but some of the things I learned from Dad, both the things he taught me and the things I learned not to do from him,
Right.
is an immense amount of knowledge and wealth in that regard, where I got to really watch him the last 30 years of his life, where I was aware of what was going on. Not 30, I guess probably 25. I was 29, I think, when he died, but I got to watch that last 15, 20 years really intensely, and then since then look back at those last 15 years really intensely and go, oh, I understand you more now than when I lived with you 24/7.
Yeah.
Which is wild. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Sometimes
wild
you're
to think
too
about.
close to it.
Yeah, you're too close to see the forest
Yeah,
through the
you're on-
trees.
Or
Yeah.
to personally experience it and to go
Yeah.
like, oh, I get
Yeah.
what he was feeling and get what he was experiencing, and
Yeah.
then to be able to replicate it. Yeah.
Well, I think we're like what you guys were saying, the experience thing. It's hard. It's harder and harder to find those people, and I'm a huge, as we do the podcast, I'm a huge, like, I hate social media, I hate TV, I hate all the stuff.
I hate it, but I love it.
I know it's, but it
Actually, I hate all of it except for X, Twitter. I'm gonna start saying X.
Which is
Fuck it.
funny because even
I-
half
I-
of that is I hate you for posting that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, some of it is doom scrolling. Yeah, some of it's just I hate you, I hate this. But I
Which
mean,
is a weird
at
happiness
this
in
point,
itself.
it is. Yeah, yeah, there you go. I just said Twitter. X is still I don't know. It's a little different for me because I think I was on Twitter in 2008 or 2009.
Mm.
Like, not from the jump. I mean, I was a year or two late, I think. I think it was right when
Facebook was
Oh,
Shoot, so that
Gosh.
must have been like your first like heavy social media then.
probably MySpace and then
no,
Facebook
MySpace.
and then
Oh, got
I mean,
it.
ICQ, AOL Instant Messenger.
Are
not
those
so much
considered social
not so much
media?
social media,
Yeah.
but it was
well, even
it
before
was
those
instant.
it was chat rooms and then
Before that
ICQ.
was just chat
Got
rooms.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
But then there was instant messaging. And so that was, no, you didn't have a page, but you had this column on the side of your computer, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody had their own username. And
Mm-hmm.
you'd rush home from school or practice, and you start talking to everybody that you
Take
were
up
just
the
at school
take up the
with.
phone
Yeah.
line.
Yeah. But no, then there was MySpace and
Okay.
Facebook. I was on Facebook, like, I think in 2005 when it first got opened up to universities. I was
Uh-huh.
at Whitewater, 2004, 2005, something
yeah,
like that.
something like that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Twitter, I think, was 2007 it was made, and it was Ashton Kutcher. Ashton Kutcher was the first account to get to 1 million followers. And I think that
Oh,
was like
wow.
in 2008 or 2009
Which was
or
the
something.
peak of his
Yeah,
just
and-
getting at the tail end of that 70s show,
Yeah.
or they,
Mm.
He was
and
in
he
some
was starting
movies
to
and
hit
stuff.
the movie
Yeah.
scene as
Yeah.
well.
And he was actually very active at that time, and he was using Twitter much in the same way like some fun celebrities use it now, where they're just like, hey, I went to McDonald's today, and da, da, da.
right.
And that's what it was.
Which
back
is
then.
funny because that's what Facebook was when it started. Was
Yeah.
Mallory will bring up like her Facebook page from 14 years ago, and it's like Mallory is in the library
know.
studying right now,
Yep.
hoping that somebody will bring her a coffee. Or, you know,
Yeah.
just
Yep.
these, and that's what Twitter was like. Well, Facebook went too much into the like details of it. Twitter went, let's just keep with the status
Well,
update.
Yep.
Twitter got giant because it was mobile.
Yep.
Because you could
Yes, it
use
was the
your
first
text
mobile.
phone
Oh,
and send
yeah.
your
It was-
tweets. That's why it was 140 characters to begin with for so long, is because that was the limit to a text message.
And then you could get
Ah.
notifications.
You
of
would
people
get your
chose.
phone number that associated with the
Yeah.
your account, and you could send a text message to that, and it would tweet it for you, and it would tweet it for you. So you didn't need internet.
Yeah.
You
I
didn't
wonder if
need cell
Facebook
reception.
Took
like-
that from Twitter then, because Facebook did that eventually. But I wonder if that was
did
the
they? Oh,
originator of
probably.
that.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They probably took it.
Yeah.
that's cool. I didn't know that.
But yeah, being on Twitter so early, like I've seen kind of some of the dips and dives and the weird ways in which it has changed or come back
Yeah.
or, and changed again in some way. Twitter, it can be whatever you want it to be. But I mean, you can mess up
Yeah.
your own algorithm and really get into a bunch of stuff that just makes you angry all the time.
Yeah.
Like you can definitely do that. And a lot of people do that where they are just seeing political stuff. But there's like a fantasy football community on Twitter. A giant one that when we started playing the Dynasty Fantasy Leagues, I was like, okay, is there anybody on Twitter doing this? And it just blew my mind. And it's the same
You're
thing.
like, it's a whole
Is there
world.
anybody doing this? Oh, there's 37 million
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, Scott Fishbowl is 9 seasons
Yeah.
deep. People have been playing fantasy football since newspapers.
Mhm.
Well,
Like,
Yeah.
So-
And that's what I think is so funny,
Mhm.
and it goes back to the kind of, I think that the naivety of our society is like, no, I'm special. Is there anybody
I
that's gone
found
on?
this. I
Yeah, is
found
there anybody that's
something
gone on
here.
Twitter and done fantasy football? Yeah, there's already millions of people
Yeah.
doing that.
And they've been doing
You-
it for a decade already.
You are special to your mom,
Yep.
to your dad,
Yep.
to your grandparents.
Yep.
Everyone else doesn't care.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stop
No one.
thinking they should
Yep.
because they don't.
About everything, always, everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't.
Like
don't.
nobody.
There's no
cares.
original thoughts anymore.
It's such a rude thing to think, but nobody cares. Nobody
What?
cares,
I'm
and it's
so
okay
on
to
that
say
train.
that.
I'm just.
It
You're
doesn't
not
mean-
unique. You're not
Yeah,
special.
you're not.
No.
And it doesn't mean
Stop.
don't do your best. It doesn't mean don't
Right.
try. It doesn't mean
Right.
don't try to be helpful and have an impact to somebody next to you. But it doesn't mean you're Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Because like unless you're an Elon Musk type, okay,
And
yeah,
he's not even Tony Stark.
you're gonna have some original thoughts. You're gonna do some different things. But if you're just another parent parenting and living your life, you're not gonna have this new concept that no one
Yeah,
has ever
sure.
done before. But I think that's where people start to like. I don't know if
Wait.
it's.
Wait. What original thoughts has Elon Musk had?
Yeah.
He just did the electric car the right way. He's making rockets the right way.
Yeah.
He bought a social media
that's what I was just
company
gonna
and
say,
did
like-
all of this because he just figured out how to get people to pay for things online.
And that's I was just gonna
Okay,
I was
true.
gonna say that's
True.
one of the things
And-
that's funny.
And
is
True.
like,
he even invented the flamethrower just to say that you can invent one.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
his idea. The
Yeah,
flamethrower's
true.
been around for a
True.
long time.
True.
and that's what I was just gonna
True.
say is like there's so many of those inventions where you're like, oh, that's really cool. Whoever came up with that was smart. And then you like look it up and it's like, well, so and so created the product, but Leonardo da Vinci developed it back in
Right.
or like
It's just
like
who
has
popped it off.
schematics written down.
Yep.
He just couldn't do it back
That's
then.
a very
I
good point.
it's-
I was
Yeah,
being a
that's
little
good point.
facetious. Obviously,
Yes.
he's had great
Yes.
ideas to
Yes.
make those general ideas
Sure.
move
Most of-
forward.
most
but
of the
You're,
major
you're
inventions.
totally right. You're totally
Yeah,
right.
most of the major
Yep.
inventions we see now are I was able to create the gadget or gizmo that made the major invention work. Like so and so couldn't create their invention because they didn't have the possibility of 3D printing this piece of plastic that flips this one switch
Yeah.
that or
Mhm.
whatever it might be. It's so funny to me because it kind of goes back to that you're not original. You're not
Mhm.
that special,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
be original and special in your home, in your family life, in the people around you. I think one of the things that's funny is Mallory will talk about like, I can't imagine you having a temper, and I laugh every time she says that because I was the one in not just our family, like of the 900 grandchildren and I was the one that flew off the handle long before everybody else did and would lose my temper. And it's so funny to me because it's like, yeah, because I learned how to react to things differently. If you can learn that one simple skill of saying, oh, I didn't react to that well, maybe I should react differently next time, and my life will be easier, and their life will be easier. Oh, things will change. But nobody wants to do that. It's the self-reflection that nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
You're not special. People have done these things before, and that's okay. Be special in that you learn how to change. You learn how to modify your life or your personality a little bit, or your, you talked about it the one podcast about like, no, being a different person around different people is normal. That doesn't mean be dishonest around some people and honest around others, but like,
Wait, you listen to their podcast?
I have been, yeah.
You don't have to.
You're not a super fan like everybody else?
Yeah.
I need to start.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm viewer number 31 on most of theirs. I see like 27 and 30 on a lot of theirs.
YouTube
We
is
had 50 on
censoring
the
us
last
for
one,
sure.
so
Yes, that's right, for
It's
sure.
very curious
We
how
should be blowing up
Yeah.
right
We
now.
had
Have you
50 on the last
considered
one.
Rumble.
Yeah.
we tap out at like 20 something each time. It seems like bullshit.
Hey, we have many more family members than 20 or 30. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that we have like
And you're not
30
listening. Corey's not
I
listening.
know.
Carey just started listening. So
Corey's
getting there.
or
I listened to a
Carly's
couple of the
religious.
hub ones, and then
Oh yeah.
I didn't even know you guys rebranded until 5 months ago.
well, we took like a year hiatus.
Yeah.
Because Shane doesn't like doing this.
I don't want to do this at all.
But no, I think it's funny, like the way that you're going to be special is to find the few people that you care if you're special around. Stop trying to be special to everybody.
Well,
Be special to a few people. Like, I am not the same person at work or out in a random social setting than I am at home with Mallory. Because I want to make sure that she always feels like there is the same Carey here. But when I'm hanging out with you guys and talking about fantasy football, I don't talk the same way or
Right.
react the same way to things as I do with you guys that I do with Mallory at home. I'm not going to do that. I don't treat Carly the same way I treat Mallory. One's my sister, one's my fiance. I'm going to treat them differently. But that doesn't mean that I dislike or love anyone differently or whatever. They're the few special people that I care about. I'm going to try to treat them with the way that I feel is going to create the best for me and for them.
Yeah.
And I don't think people think about that anymore. They just think about what's in it for me. What do
Oh,
I
totally.
get out of it?
Well, and I think it goes back to what you were talking about with the responsibility thing, like taking all the responsibility. Because there's,
It's always my fault.
yeah, and I think the way that people operate now is it's always everybody else's fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
Mm-hmm.
JFK saying. It's the complete opposite now. It's like, why isn't the government just giving me money, paying off my student loans? Why aren't they doing this for me, doing that for me? Why is at my job? Why can't I get this going? Or it's just every excuse under the sun. And it's like, well, what have you done?
Another
Mhm.
cliche. Everybody's got excuses. Or excuses are like buttholes. Everybody's got one. They all stink.
Yeah.
Like, it's a cliche line, and yet at the same time, it's correct.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like, we're so afraid of the, if I admit that I screwed up, people are going to look at me differently. And yet, one of the biggest things I found, like with our job, we were just talking about this morning, like, if you have a service, but you talk to the field manager, told him what was going on, told him that you messed up or you screwed up or whatever it might be, it's never an issue. They go, oh, okay, yeah, we'll figure that out. There's even times where it's not our fault. It's not my mess up or Casey's mess up. It had nothing to do with us. And I'll come back and say, hey, I screwed up and I didn't check the paperwork well enough this morning and make sure that I had the right parts or had the right this or had the right that. And me taking responsibility for that and holding that gives me a completely different reaction than if I were to walk into that building and go, you mother blank. Like,
Yeah.
you did you set me up for failure. Like, then that would become just an explosion of, and all I had to do was say, no, that's my fault. I should have checked that. No, part of it is I should have learned by now that you guys are going to screw up, and I should have double checked that.
Sure. Yeah.
That's my
Exactly.
fault.
Yep.
You're right.
Yep.
That's my fault. I didn't make sure that you didn't do your job right.
and it makes things easier.
Yes.
Like when you just open your plate up and go, all right, pour it on.
Yeah.
It's gonna be my responsibility. That's fine. I'll sometimes it might be delegation. I'll delegate. I'll tell whoever needs to do this thing, or I'm gonna prioritize. Or I'll ask you what needs to be done first. Oh, we have these 4 things. I'm gonna take on all 4 of them. But what
Mhm.
is a priority? Oh, this thing. I'm gonna go do that first.
Yeah.
But if I take it on, it's not all about control, but I think the control part of it is what makes it kind of easy. Like, I'm not relying on somebody else to do this part of it. It makes it easy. And if you can control a lot of the aspects of your life and you can bear responsibility for it, when somebody comes in and says, hey, do you need a hand? You're more likely to go, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Come and help me with this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm going to get you back, or you owe me one, maybe. But I also know that I'm going to get you back. And I know that you helping me right now, when I may actually need it with what I need to do, is going to help me get further down the line with whatever I actually need to accomplish. It's selfish in some way to try to take on everything for yourself. But it allows you to be able to say, yeah, come and help me out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the other thing too is the more that you can take on around you. So like, Casey and I have joked about, like, he'll always say, my plate's big enough. I can handle that. My plate's big enough, type of thing. And it may not even be that your plate is big enough. It's more of like, if I can take it off of your plate, when it does start to spill over, you have a spot to hold it. Like, if I can take on as much as I can bear and carry as much as I can bear, when I do get to a point where I can't quite bear it anymore, the person that I'm helping out on this side or that side or that side, I've already taken it off their plate. They may have a little bit extra room where they can handle it then.
Yep.
And as opposed to when you push everything off onto somebody else and somebody different, whatever, the next thing that comes at you that you don't feel like you can handle, that may be actually a serious thing that you can't handle, nobody around you is able to handle it either, because you've already pushed it all off on them. You have nothing to fall back on
And
now.
the practicing, like, to be able to say, my plate is never full enough, I can handle all of it. Like, that practice of that daily
mindset.
I will be the one that
it's an affirmation.
takes on all the responsibilities, or takes on the ownership of the blame, or whatever. Like, that is something that is a daily practice.
Well, you guys talked about that, a month ago? The what did you call it? The micro
sucks.
micro sucks. Yes,
Yeah.
the micro sucks. Take on the micro sucks. Mallory hates doing dishes, so I try to do dishes as much as I can. And I know I've talked about this before, but I try to do dishes as much as I can, because if that's one thing I can take off of her plate that makes her life a little bit easier, it's dishes. It sucks. It is a micro suck.
You call it micro sucks?
Yeah. I was going to tell you about that when I listened, because that's a good one. It's a micro suck. It's a daily thing that nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
The more micro sucks you can take on, the easier the rest of your day is.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's the you like I hate to, but every single prominent person you can think of, when you listen to them actually talk about what they do on a daily basis, they'll talk about doing their most difficult task by choice. Joe Rogan's most difficult thing is the workout he puts himself through, because everything else after that's easy. Like,
well,
if
I think he's changed his mind on that. The most difficult thing is the ice bath.
Well,
so
right.
he does that right away in the morning.
But it's still
he
a micro
hates that
suck
thing, but he does it. Yeah, it's the micro.
But it's that mentality of, like, when you put off the little things all the time and don't want to do them, what are you going to do when a big thing comes? You're not going to be able to handle it. But if you can handle the little things daily, day in, day out, the micro sucks every single day, when that big thing comes, you go, oh, okay, this is going to be tough, but all this other stuff is easy. So I've got room and I've got the energy for that. It's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's like, what are you building for? Or what are you built for? You want to be somebody that can't handle shit? Like, you come home from a long day of work and the dishes are going to collapse you?
Oh,
yeah.
I was judging Corey so hard the other day when he went to start a bonfire with a torch. What are you doing, dude? Be a man.
Make it harder.
Get the flint out and start
Rubbing
some rocks together. Like, what are you doing, man?
Save the torch for the apocalypse.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Right. But
when you need to light a fire fast, like, that's what you need it for. Practice, man.
But it's one of those things where it's like, it sounds so dumb, but like Casey and I talk about, like, I want to go up north and spend the weekend up there with nothing. We watch Alone and we go, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like
on the show, but
be on the show, but like, I want to go do that.
Yeah.
Where I walk into the woods with a backpack that's full of a few supplies, the simple axe, knife, whatever, a few supplies, make it work for a week.
Yeah.
And not because, like, I'm a glutton for punishment. It's more of like, well, can I?
Right.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
to get a little bit out in the weeds there, like there are things going around this world right now where there's a chance where the electrical grid goes down tomorrow. What can you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What skills do you have?
And while we might be feeling it more now, that's always a possibility. That's always a possibility that something happens where everything shuts down. The economy shut down, whatever shut down. There are countries right now where that is happening in. Are we prepared for that? Am I prepared for that?
And it could be
But
natural
micro sucks are the way you do it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
micro disasters. Can you handle a week without power because of a massive
Yep.
storm?
Yeah,
You know,
that's all I was gonna say. Like, it doesn't have to be apocalyptic, but
Right,
yeah, a
right.
tornado comes through, or just flooding in a way that rips out a
Hurricane.
transformer. Right? Like, you got a few days worth of water? Like,
Yeah. Yep.
That's simple.
And to think about that
And you
stuff.
can take it. You can take. Obviously, people do, and you can take it as far as you want to, as prepping or survivalist or whatever. But it's a good idea to be prepared for something.
well, yeah, it's
Like, pick your battles. You
Mhm.
know.
it's
and,
as simple as one of the biggest causes of death every year is exposure to cold.
yeah.
And it's in countries where they don't have the infrastructure to
Mhm.
go inside a warm house every night when it's cold
Mhm.
outside.
Yeah.
You know, like it's stuff like that where like if you get into a situation where you have a bad winter, power goes out, and you got 48 hours of, Corey and Tanya just a few years ago, power went out at their house because of an ice storm, and they had to stay with Carly and Matt for a couple of nights. And it's awesome to have that to fall back on. What if you don't have that?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What are you doing at your house?
Mhm.
You know, what how are you staying warm? How are you making sure your children are warm and protected and
Yeah,
cared for?
You're creating a fireplace somewhere,
Right,
you
out
know,
of
like a
nowhere,
burn
yeah.
barrel next to a window type thing.
That's
just
why
to
I
stay
almost like the
warm.
idea of if you don't want to have a wood stove in your house, I understand that.
Have
Put one
one.
in anyway,
Yeah.
Back
just
up.
in case.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah. That's
It's not
especially
some-
in this climate up here.
You don't have to maintain those things. It's
Not
like if
really,
you're
no.
not using it, it
Yeah.
just stays
Sits there.
not used.
Make sure
yeah.
the chimney's cleaned out
Yeah.
and not full of debris or something. But yeah, like it. I almost think those things are like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't every house just come with that as a just in case?
Just in case.
Well,
Because we want us to fail. That's what I think the idea of the micro
well,
sucks is.
they want control too.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Right.
If that is like if that's the whole generation, or if that's like the bulk of you guys coming up, I mean,
Well, I hope it is at least.
Yeah, I hope.
I guess I shouldn't say maybe everyone's like that, but
sure, and maybe that's my age showing some pessimism in some way, because I did think that way too, and I mean, there's a number of things that as you get older, you're like, wait, not everybody thinks about it that way,
Mhm.
Yeah.
or they don't know that, and you're like, well, if they don't know that, then what else don't they know?
Mhm.
And there's people looking at me doing the same thing. Well, if he doesn't know that, then whoa, good luck
Right.
to him. But I mean, that'd be fantastic if we have a generation coming up that is, if they're at least paying attention in the way that you were just talking about, and that we were just talking about, where they're more than willing to listen to long form conversations and listen to both smart people, both educated people, and common people, or an average person actually duke it out with each other or just amongst each other.
Mhm.
And listen to these long form conversations and listen to ideas develop. If your generation is having that many conversations, or there's that many people that are willing to listen to those and then have those conversations later on, like, I mean, that we're headed in the right direction, because that means the TikTok age or the Instagram reel age is shrunken down to just a couple of generations,
Mhm.
and we don't have to deal with that much further. I don't know. I think that I don't know. That just excites me if your generation is like that, because it was I got older, and then I realized that, like, oh yeah, not everybody is kind of thinking about the long game, if you will.
Right.
And even in, to my detriment, I was thinking about the long game instead of things that were right in front of me a
Sure.
lot of the times. And,
Sure.
that's just something I had to learn the hard way.
I think social media has helped and hurt that mindset. I think we are very immediate in the gratification that we want. So we want our lives to be perfect right now. We want to have
Yeah.
the wealth right now. We want to have the family and everything But I think we also see on social media, which you're disconnected from this, but I think we see the generation above us living the life but complaining about it, and just like how, like, on my feed it's always just like how being a mom is sucks and it's hard, and being a wife to someone is difficult, and having a job is difficult, that we're coming into the scope of, well, shit, I don't want that.
Right.
So we need to do everything opposite of that, because we have this self-esteem, or whether it's the fake confidence of like, well, I don't want that. Like,
Yeah.
I think I can do it better. So I'm going to come in at a completely different mindset
Sure.
and do it. But I also want it right now. I want it when I'm 22. I don't want to have to wait. And then I don't know if that's like a weird, we're getting both ends of the spectrum of we think we're better than we are, but then also not wanting the negatives to come with it. But we're like, okay, well, all these people are struggling with something. So there must be some truth in that. That must actually be difficult. It must actually be hard to do those things. So how can we do it in the new age approach and the stubborn mindset of like, well, we're younger, so we can figure it out differently. But then in some weird way, we actually somewhat figure it out because we're learning from the generation above of like, okay, well, you did that and that was difficult. How do we rework the system but still get the same outcomes and like be happy with that?
Sure. And I think some of that is going to be, you're not going to be able to rework the system. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of ideas that you're going to have that are brand new.
No.
And you know, after I finally I have 2 kids now, and second one was completely different from the first one, and the first one was a breeze.
Yeah.
Was a breeze, and it's still for the most part a breeze. And the second one wasn't, at least early on. She's actually coming into her own quite a bit now, and is not as much of a hassle, right? But there's nothing that I could say that would prepare you for it. You can read as many books as you want. You can talk to as many people as you want. There's just that sudden, when you finally have one and you turn to somebody else that already has one, or they are turning to you, and you look at each other and you're like, oh, and they're just like, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it's just this weird realization, this weird primal understanding that like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you have. That's what you should have been doing this entire time. I waited way too long. Like, for as many kids as I thought I wanted, I should have been doing something a lot earlier about it. But quite happy with what I got. But I think that understanding that you're not going to be able to reinvent some of those things, that it's just the way that it is. And you kind of brought it up earlier about, I think it had something to do with failure, or and maybe like just stick-to-itiveness. But I forget where the phrase originates from, but like, the easiest path is through.
Right.
Because the obstacle is there. You can beat around the bush all you want. You can find a way around it. You're still going to have to deal with it somehow. The easiest way is through. Whether that's some resistance towards inspiration, whether that's depression, whether that's weight loss, whether that's anything you're trying to deal with, the easiest way ultimately is going to end up just being lined
Power
up,
through.
headstrong, and going through it, barreling through it.
Yeah. And I think our generation is celebrating a little bit more the opposite of maybe what your guys' generation of, like, even taking the parenthood thing and like the wife that needs to like have the career and be the crazy mom. I think our generation is celebrating the old ways of like, no, you can just be a kick-ass mom and that's awesome. Like, you don't have to do like the boss bitch thing and be a crazy mom. Like, you
starting to come back
enough.
around.
Yeah, to where like that's the cool thing.
Yeah, and that is starting to come back around a little. What do they call it? Tradcon wives and stuff like that. Traditional conservative wives or whatever. Maybe. I mean, everybody just wants a label in some ways.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, make that.
but it does seem to be
I
coming
think they
back
want to
around.
label others is almost more of what it is.
Well, I guess like we
To a
teach a lot of
certain
kids.
degree. Yeah.
We teach a lot of kids, and a lot of the families that we teach, like, even homeschooling is
Yeah.
way more prevalent than
Yeah.
it was. Like we have a lot of kids
Yeah.
that are homeschooled and multiple like large families that are doing that, and
Well,
like,
2020 really helped spur that along too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And like they're
Yeah.
living off of
One,
their
they
land.
were forced to. Two, they
Yes,
started
yes.
seeing what was happening in
Sure.
classrooms and went, well, and whether it was you didn't agree with what was happening, or it was my kid's bored because I've already taught them this. So you're so far behind as far as where I want my kid to be at that, what when you look at schools, and it's not that there's been a degradation in the quality of teachers, but there's been a degradation of what we expect of the children. The teachers are still teaching. They're still doing the best that they can within the means that they can. We just don't expect anything from students anymore. We don't expect it. We've always joked around about no, you should be more afraid of your parents than you are your teachers.
Yeah.
And the kids aren't afraid of their parents, which now means they're not afraid of their teachers at all.
Or they see that it kind of turns the teacher into an equal.
Exactly.
Like, well, no, if I ain't afraid of my parents,
I'm not gonna be afraid of
then
you.
there's nothing for me to be afraid about here.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think age appropriate expectations. Like a kindergartner and the way that they develop in their brain, like, no, they shouldn't be sitting at a desk for 8 hours in a day.
You can say that, and you can also say the difference between age and also the difference between gender. I didn't struggle in school until I got teachers that wanted me to sit at desks for 45 minutes at a time and not do anything.
Yep.
My struggle in school was it didn't matter if it was math, English, whatever. The best classes I had were not the ones directly after recess because I was still amped up, but they were the ones after that. Once I had calmed back down again, but I had gotten a physical expenditure. And then I'd sit there and I'd watch some of the females in class, and it's one of those things where you look back on later in life, but it's like, oh no, they were cool the whole time. They went out to recess and they played in kindergarten and first grade. They played patty cake and whatever else, the hopscotch stuff. But like some of us boys, we were playing tackle football until we got yelled at, and then we played touch while the person was watching, and then we went back to playing tackle football again. Like, but even as when I was coaching,
Sweat.
I would
be sitting
we
in
would
classes.
sweat. Yeah, it's just sweaty, just profusely sweating. And like even when I was coaching, I would notice that like I got the same attention span at the beginning of practice from the females as I got at the end. It didn't change. The attention span I had from the males was drastically different between the beginning and the end. At the end of the day, they could listen now. At the beginning of the day, they had way too much going on that they needed to get rid of. It was just not okay for that. They could not sit and listen to anything. And we have this one size fits all standard for things. Personally, I would argue a lot of that standard is based around the feminine way of doing things or the feminine way of learning.
Yep.
Where, well, no, it's okay to sit there for 9 hours today and listen to what people want to say and teach you and whatever. Whereas if you were to go with a more male, there's a reason why men dominate STEM. It's hands-on. Majority of it is hands-on. I get to go and tear the valve cover off of this engine and rebuild the top end of this engine. It's hands-on. I'm learning by doing. It just bodes better for men to do that for some reason, for boys to do that, for the male gender to do that. You're never going to see that go away. Like as much as they want to try, and as much as there's going to be the slight overlap in instances, there's going to be that no matter what. There's always going to be that. But the large majority, extremes and everything.
Too, yeah.
But the large
some
majority,
girls do more activity and some boys
the
don't.
large majority is going to be that if you get a boy out doing something physical, they're more willing to pay attention to you. And we don't do that in schools, period.
Yeah.
Well, and now, like, even females are not getting activity. So now all kids are, that's what I say, like, if you have a misbehaved kid, they are overstimulated and underactive. Like, they're, like, hopped up on their own caffeine, and now you're going, focus, and sit down, and be patient. It's like, that's not age appropriate. That you're requiring them something that is so not in their nature, and now we're not developing their brain in a way that's going to be suitable for them later on. To where, yes, if you were telling a boy, like that's why I have boys and girls class separated. The boy, I am having them run around constantly before we focus on 2 seconds.
Mom
of
used
things.
to always tell me that she takes credit for my track career because when I got in trouble, she'd make me run laps around the
Yep.
house. And
Yep.
after I got done running laps around the house,
Yep.
I was able to listen to what she was saying.
And that's not a bad thing.
I
No,
know
right.
it's not.
That's not you being a bad kid.
Well, and I think that's where it gets, Casey and I have
No,
talked
it's
about
child
this.
abuse.
Right. No,
Yeah,
it's
now
child
it
abuse
is,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, now it's child
Exactly.
abuse.
Exactly.
But that's like,
Come here, kid
Casey and I have
activity.
talked about this before. One of the things that, and I 100% agree, because I've made comments about having ADHD, and the first time I said it, he kind of gave me this side-eyed glance, because all through school, I'd never gone to get tested or whatever. And I had one teacher in like 6th grade that told our parents that he needs to get tested. He has something going on. And they went, he didn't struggle until now. It's probably more you than it. They didn't say this to her, but it was kind of their mentality of like, he was getting A's and B's last year in 5th grade. Why in 6th grade is he struggling? Something has changed. It's not necessarily him.
And they had talked about that at home, like kind of openly. So like we all kind of knew.
Yeah,
about
we all.
that,
Mom
'cause
and Dad were.
They were kind of upset about that. Like, what are they?
Yeah, what are they accusing our
trying
child
to-
of?
Like, what's happening
well,
here?
For now, that's a reward.
And when I
it's
got to
Yeah, no.
college, I did a little bit more of that experimenting of like, what is going on with me? What am I struggling with? What am I? It's kind of like the joke we talk about. Like, I noticed in college that each semester would pass by, and I'd have to sit closer and closer to the front of the class just to see the screen. And it took me like 3 semesters to go, oh my, I can't see. My eyes are getting bad. It wasn't like a cognitive thing I thought of.
Yeah.
But when I got into school, I was like, I am struggling to focus on some things. Part of it was the first year of college, they make you go back and do
high school.
what you just did in high school, which is mind-numbingly boring for somebody that already didn't like what they did in high school. So I went and got the tests run, and they said, yes, you have this. And I took some medication for a while, and I'm sure it worked, but I felt like a pile. Like I just couldn't, like nothing excited me anymore. Nothing made me want to get up out of the bed in the morning and do anything. I was just blah. And I remember going, I'm not going to do this. I need to just learn how to live with what I have the right way. And what I found was, I'm running track. If I just really dive into that, so then junior year, I come back to school in the best shape of my life, because I went, if I'm not working, I'm working out and I'm getting ready for that. I'm using that energy for something good. And nowadays, it's your kid can't sit well in class. There must be something wrong with him. Or that's the type of kid that's going to be doing physical labor later on in their life, and they're going to love it and enjoy it and actually get a fulfillment out of that type of thing, whether it's at home or at their career. And you're just trying to tell them not to do that.
Yeah.
You're a one-size-fitting-all type of
Yep.
mentality.
Yeah.
We teach a class of 6 to 8-year-olds, and majority of the class, they come in and they are bouncing off the walls. They can't focus, and it's like they're not misbehaving. They're not trying to do this. It's like they cannot help it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a family of 6 that they're homeschooled, and it's not because they're homeschooled. It's they are active all day long. They are flipping on the trampoline. They're outside. They're taking their classroom outside and like engaging in their environment, and they're active all freaking day long. And they walk in and they're 6 and 7, and they're like calm as can be, like, hey, what's up, guys?
They're adult. They're almost adult-like.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you just got your energy out and you're
Yeah.
able to focus now.
Focus.
And
Well,
these are
listen
boys.
and
And
learn.
that's-
These
Yeah.
are boys.
And that's also something crazy that Casey and I have seen get brought up in some of the stuff we watch and listen to, is go back and watch an old video of a 10-year-old from like 1960, 1950, if you can find it, and they'll be talking and you're going, this child is more articulate than most of the people I know. They're speaking in a very adult manner, an adult way. It's kind of the joke from hey buddy. It's kind of the joke from Meet the Fockers, where, we don't swear around him, we don't talk like that around him, but we talk like adults around him, so that when he does start talking as a child, he's not going to talk like a little baby all the time and mispronounce things all the time. It's kind of that mentality of like, treat them like a miniature adult, because that is the expectation they're going to have when they get older.
Mhm.
And when you get to be 18, 19 years old and you're expected to act like an adult, you don't know how to, because nobody treated you like an adult the entire time you were growing up.
Yeah.
That's where I think, to a certain degree, not that you had an advantage, but you had an understanding of, this is what it means to be an adult. Because from the jump, all of us were almost adults most of the time that you were growing up. So there was this expectation of like, you see what's going on around here. Nobody cares. act like an adult. We're not
Yeah.
going to baby
Mhm.
you into this. And that's what I think is so funny is like he gets the moniker of being the youngest and being quote unquote babied, and he wasn't. And it wasn't because it wasn't because we just were wanting to be mean or anybody was. It was more of like, we got other shit going on. We don't have time to baby you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's like,
nobody has
level
time
up.
for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Like keep up or you're
Yeah.
getting left behind
Yeah.
type of
Yep.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't have that mentality anymore. Keep up. If you can't
Yeah.
keep up, we shouldn't be slowing down for you.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're a catering society now.
No, yeah.
It's. I have so many thoughts about it.
Well, and maybe even the sibling thing, like we have 2 brothers, and one is older and one is younger, and we kind of always, or you talk about that a lot with them, of like, the older one is just better at things, obviously, and the younger one will get upset. And it's like, no, you guys need each other. The older one, you're setting the standard, and he is working up to you, but also the younger one, you have an important role because you need to push the older one for the older one to keep leveling up. Like,
it's a push
you
and
need-
pull.
Yeah,
it's a
you
push
need,
and pull.
yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
not he's older, so you're always falling short.
Yeah.
Like, no, you need
Right.
to up the
If you
standard
want
so
to
that
be
the
as
older
good
one
as you think you want to
up.
be, you need to make sure that he is as good as he
stepping up the
wants to
standard.
be.
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
that when
Yep.
Casey was going into his senior year, him and Corey were at the gym constantly. And while there wasn't necessarily this idea, like at least for me at home, where like, oh, Corey's going to be stronger than Casey type of thing. But it was kind of this thing where like you could see that there was an air of Casey's getting ready for football and he wants to do really well his senior year. Corey's not really doing sports anymore. He's more just doing it to do it, like he's enjoying it, whatever. But there was also this air of like Corey was trying to push his limits to catch up to Casey a little bit, or to to be in that same realm. And there was also this air of Casey going, like, I'm not gonna let that happen.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that to happen.
Mhm.
Like, I always joke that like I'll never forget the first time I beat Casey in a football game on a video game football game. I'll never forget it because it wasn't so much that like I was mad that I always lost, because I always lost in those games, but it was more of a like that was the goal, was to finally beat
Mhm.
him. And he had kind of, I think, let the game be closer than he could have potentially allowed it to be, because he had always beat me. So it was all, and so when I finally won the game, it became tense between the two of us for like a week at home, because I had finally beat my older brother at this video game. I don't think I won again for like 5 more years. Like Casey was like, "Oh, okay, you're close now. I'm gonna make it obvious you're not close. Like I'm gonna make it obvious you're not even
I
close.
let you win this time.
Yeah,
No.
you got one. Not gonna happen again." And like I don't think I would have. Now, to my detriment, to a certain degree, I got into the football video games a little bit too much at some points. But like that made me just want to play more, work harder, do that type of thing.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was like you said, it was that push pull constantly.
I think it's important to at least put yourself in the position to have those type of challenges early in life. It can be something as simple as a video game. It can be something as, at that time of your life, it's very important, weightlifting, getting ready for senior year of football. But you are going to run into those moments later in life too, where it's not necessarily make it or break it, but it's like, well, this is what you signed up for. You do it now, or you don't do it. If you don't do it, there's consequences, or there's repercussions, or there's just a different path, or however you want to look at it. But you either do it or you don't do it. And like that, whether I recognized it in the moment or not, there was a time, and it was like, well, yeah, you can go through the motions here at the weight room, and you're there.
Yeah.
But Corey's there. Corey could catch you.
Yep.
There's a captain spot on the line. There's probably a starting spot on the line. I mean, going into my senior year, I probably wasn't guaranteed a starting spot at the running back position anyway.
Yeah, you were probably technically number one on the depth chart, but it was a competition during training camp.
There was absolutely the opportunity for other people to beat me out. And so there's a moment in which you just have to say yes or no. I'm going to throw everything into this. Job that we just had earlier this week. It's like first time I've ever done something like this. I'm thrown into it. And, in the first 10 minutes, you're standing there looking at it like, well, no, I'm here. I have no other choice.
Yeah.
Well, I have one choice. I can say goodbye, but what does that lead to, right?
Mhm.
You have consequences.
Mhm.
Like, no, this is what I'm going to do.
You're
And-
staring at the base of a mountain, and
Yeah.
you have the choice of I quit and give up, or I got to start climbing.
And
Yep.
like we were brought up just a minute ago, it's easiest path is through.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is our family and your family, because I think there's a lot of people that just are like, just get through. To where it's like,
I want to
'Cause-
conquer.
because I'm the same way. Like, I'll come to those moments and it's like, this is a deciding moment. You gonna back out or you gonna fucking take this over?
Yeah.
And
Well-
it's like, it's not like, let's just get through the day. It's like, no, I'm gonna beat the day.
And that's
And I don't know, but I would go to say, like, I don't think a lot of people are like that, where they come to that moment and go, they have that decider. It's just like, well, this is going to be hard, and I guess I'll just kind of do the thing.
to bring it back
like-
a little bit. That's almost what. And again, I don't have children, so I'm going off of what I have experienced watching other people, watching my siblings have children, or watching other people with children. But that's almost what I see happen to people that become parents. Is it especially ones that maybe have, I don't want to say coasted through life, but have maybe kind of let life come to them. They have a child, and it seems to be for some of them like this, like, oh shit. Like, we have to nut up and we have to conquer this. We can't just passively let this
Mhm.
walk by. Unfortunately, there's a lot that still let it be kind of a passively
Yeah.
let us walk by.
Mhm.
But when you find somebody that's a very good, wholesome person that has become a parent, you see them, all of a sudden things change entirely. Their demeanor changes, their mentality changes,
Well-
the way they look at things change entirely.
Kids humble the shit out of you. And I'm just saying that
Oh,
from being
yeah.
a teacher of them. It's like,
Yeah.
are you going to level up or not? Because otherwise, I own you. So
Yeah.
either you figure your shit out or I'm in charge. So then
Right.
they're in now your house and you're the parent of that. Like,
Right.
you better figure it out fast.
Right.
Otherwise, they run your world.
And I think that's why a lot of parents struggle nowadays. Again, this is so weird talking about it as being Casey's the only one here that has children. But
he's like, you guys don't
Yeah,
want
shut
But
up.
I-
Don't say anything.
but I think yeah. But
Let
I
it
think
ride.
but I think the thing that is happening is
Talk
I'll-
your shit.
Yeah.
right. But I think the thing that
Almost
is
5 years from
happening
now, we're like, fuck, I don't
is
know. I don't
a lot of parents are going, I'm so tired from trying to be the boss babe at work and the CEO and the whatever and be mom, or I'm tired of trying to be the man of the house, trying to provide for my family, whatever. When I come home, what does it matter if the kid watches an extra half hour of TV? What does it matter if the kid has to distract himself or has to do this or whatever? And part of it is older generations didn't have that option. You didn't have the option
No,
to sit your
yeah.
kid in front of a TV for 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day or more. It just wasn't an option to distract them. Part of it is also we've allowed ourselves to become complacent. I don't want to say lazy necessarily, but kind of complacent in that, like, well, if other parents are doing it, let them do it. I can do it too. And I think kind of like you said, like, no, I don't want to be like the other parents. I want to be the one that says, okay, turn it off. Let's go.
Sure.
Even if it means that I'm playing catch with somebody in the yard, with my child in the yard, or teaching them how to ride a bike or whatever it might be. Like, one of the benefits that I noticed of being a part of a larger family was we did play a lot of video games. I learned later on in life we didn't play nearly as much video games as a lot of other people did.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
But I think it was because it was a single child, or their brother or sister was 7 years younger or 5 years older or whatever. We'd play a video game and it'd be like, look at that spin move. I can do that. No, you couldn't. All right, I'll show you. And we'd run upstairs and like put the game on pause, and we'd be outside playing for 4 hours,
Yeah.
forgetting that the game was downstairs on pause. That to me was one of those things where like we kind of tricked ourselves out of being the gamer nerds that sat in the basement the whole day, just simply because we had siblings around.
Yeah.
If you don't have other children, as the parent, you've got to be the one to pull them away from that, to say, hey, yes, it's okay to learn from that. Dad
Mhm.
would never admit that video games were helpful for sports or football or anything until you came along and went, well, yeah, I know what a cover 2 is. And he's like, you're 9. How do you know what a cover 2 is? And it was,
Repetitions.
Carey and I were playing the other day, and then I came back and was playing too, and that's cover 2 defense. And you can get benefit out of those things.
He was destroying my man-to-man coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was blitzing the middle linebacker and
Yeah.
outside linebacker every play.
Yeah.
I had to switch to cover 2.
Yeah, his quarterback was a 97 overall, and the man-to-man coverage, he had a wide receiver that was a 97 speed, so I couldn't cover him with my corners one-on-one. I had to switch to a cover 2.
Cover 2
Yeah.
didn't work either.
Yeah, cover 2 worked for a minute, and then he figured that out, so I had to switch to a cover 3 with a outside corner blitz. And but it was one of those things where, Dad would never admit that until he saw it.
Yeah.
Dad was very much until you prove it to me, I'm not going to do it. The offense we ran in when you were in middle school, he hated it because
Yeah.
Dad was a 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of guy. And I remember having to sit down. I think you and I both sat down with him and go it's not the same. You're right, Dad, but it has the same concepts. When we run a little quick shuttle screen out to the left side to a wide receiver, it's a pass, but that's our 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We're not expecting a 40-yard play every play here still. You're still setting up the defense. We're just trying to widen the range of the field with this offense and spread people out so that when we do find one seam or two seams, we can exploit that. He had to see it first. And I think that what we're noticing is that Dad was able to come around to, there's a positive to it. But we also have to understand that that positive has a limit. There's a limit to, you can learn a lot from video games, from TV, from movies, from whatever, but you still got to go outside.
Yeah. Well, and I think
there's a whole world out there that you need to understand as well.
The elderly knowledge of okay, but you're also fighting against what I know. So
and of experience.
Sure, bring your new ideas and bring your new thoughts to the table. We'll explore it, but it has to back up what I already have known and experienced, and it has to be better than that in order for me to adopt that new idea.
Better than that or improve on the same thing.
Yes. Otherwise, what's the point? If it's not better, it doesn't need to be different.
That's why Christians love it when people come to them with the simulation theory. Because they're like, oh, you got an idea, do you?
Yeah.
That there was some grand creator?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds familiar to me.
A grand creator that created all of this.
Yeah.
And do we look like him?
Is there
are we similar to him or her in any way?
Do they exist in a different
skills?
dimension?
Yeah.
Oh, they do. Interesting.
This sounds familiar. Can I put my finger on it?
Tell me more about your new idea.
Yeah. Seems like something we've been practicing for thousands of years.
Well, that's just it. The circle of life is essentially what it comes down to. Of they talk about the Christian mythology is the ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I came from nothing. I came from the dirt. I came from toil. I'm going to go back to the dirt when I'm done, type of thing. It's the same thing when you talk about that. We've gone so far away from Christianity, Judaism, even Islam, in that. Well, no, that's just crazy talk. It's crazy talk. But when I went and explored this for the last 150 years, this simulation theory sounds right on point. Well, what is it? Well, it's the same thing you talk about, but I don't have to praise him all day every day. And it's but it's the same thing.
It's got a little tech to it.
So
seriously.
Yeah. So
it's just a techie version of it.
Yeah. But also in the simulation, do you find that the same general rules for life apply? Well, kind of. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to follow those?
So
I don't know.
Yeah. So
if you could put a number on them.
Yeah. Would there be 10 rules? You think?
You think?
Yeah. And then what's so funny to me is we're not even really a very Christian family. We went to church growing up, but it was Methodist, so it was kind of Christian and whatever, progressive Christian.
Christian light.
And
Christian light.
us older three got confirmed. Carly got confirmed, I think. I don't think
Yes.
you ever did.
Nope.
And like it was kind of this, it kind of died off, as we got older as far as how Christian we were and how much we went to church and everything. And it's so funny because like as I'm getting older, I'm like, yeah, they did a bad job of explaining this when I was in church and Sunday school. Like it's when you hear the BIBLE, basic instructions before leaving Earth, and you're like, oh, that's so dumb. And then you start looking at the actual rules and laws and whatever in the Bible. You're like, yeah, some of them might be kind of outdated, but there's a reason they have them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't eat pork. Why don't you eat it? Well, it's because they didn't know how to cook it well enough to not die from the diseases that pork can possibly have.
They had no idea what trichinosis
They
was.
didn't have. They didn't know what trichinosis was. So, well, you have to cook that differently. Okay, well, just don't eat it.
Right.
Okay, well that makes sense back in 20.
Yep.
20 BC or 20 AD. Like that makes sense back then. Now we go, well, we understand that. Makes sense. Why we understand that? Whatever.
But even Kurt just goes, don't eat hot dogs though.
Right.
That's our version of that.
Right. But like, it's just so funny to me because it's like, so we came all the way back around to be kind.
Yeah.
Like I see the be kind shirts and I have to kind of laugh because I'm like, oh, so you're Christian? No. Oh, okay. Well, that's like one of the main tenets of being a Christian is just to be kind to your neighbors.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just assumed, I guess. It's just such a weird dichotomy that we're seeing now because
when everybody ignores the cross on the coexist bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at all these other symbols.
Yeah. It became like a hippie
Don't look
symbol
at that
rather
one.
than it being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that goes to the pasteurized milk thing too. To me, it's like you took a 1890s problem and created an 1890s solution,
And
Great.
you never evolved after that.
but
You never
then you
changed
never
it.
changed
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were putting the cow's hooves in the milk to cool the milk because they were cooler in the morning. Yeah, you're gonna get diseases, like clearly.
Yeah.
And then you found a solution for that. Great, but now there's a ginormous industry and business around it that we can't break.
That we can't put cow hooves in the milk anymore
Oh,
because we don't have to cool it off anymore.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we don't have to do that anymore, then do we have to go through the whole pasteurization
Right.
process?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where we were when we were looking into it. The homogenization thing was just like, I can understand the pasteurization, but the homogenization thing just pisses me off. You're literally doing this for aesthetic. That's all it
Yeah.
does.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes the milk all white throughout. That's all you're doing.
Right.
And then they have the audacity to say, well, it doesn't do anything to the milk. Bullshit. You're separating all the fat particles in the milk so that it evenly goes throughout. And you're going to say that it doesn't do anything? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's like me taking an apple and peeling all the skin off and going, it's the same. No, it's not.
Yeah.
You just lost a shit ton of fiber.
Yeah.
Like, what are you fucking talking about?
Cutting the
Mhm.
crust off of your sandwiches.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do we... And then people are like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's like, no, fuck you. I'm going to worry about it.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that's that's something I was thinking about on the way out here tonight was like, one was, well, what are we going to talk about? Like, we never really set like what are we going to talk about? And then I just went like, there are way too many things that we can talk about, should talk about, want to talk about, and even things that we have to think about in our daily lives. And like, the funniest part to me is the people that go, oh, don't worry about it. And you're like, no, all of us should be worrying about it a hell of a lot more than we are. The stuff we
Mhm.
do worry about
Yep.
is the stuff that is just completely
You know
not
what I'm gonna
important.
say.
But
The sun is going to explode.
Get
But
your
no,
kids
but that's-
on the rockets.
Get on the rocket ship.
but it's one of those things where it's like I sit there and I'm like, hold on. You're upset that so and so made one comment at work today and it made you feel bad. But you're not worried about the fact that the food that you're about to eat has a bunch of chemicals in it. You're not worried about the fact that,
Yep.
the water in your city water is full of a bunch of chemicals to make it cleaner. Yes, it does do that. It's also not good for you.
Right.
Like, we don't have to use as much toothpaste or brush our teeth as much because there's so much fluoride in our water.
Yeah.
That's how bad it's gotten.
Mhm.
And like, to think that, oh, it's just fluoride. All it does is whiten your teeth. No, it does a lot more than that in your system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It goes past your teeth eventually and into the rest of your body. What is it doing there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't have to worry about it. There's
Yeah.
a set number that matters. Okay.
And then what you always say, and you take that one example and you extrapolate it by 1,000 because that's just one thing you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, what soaps are you putting on your body? What lotions? What are you doing? You know, what are you eating? What are you drinking? What
Makeup
How
are
many
you
plastic
wearing?
Makeup are
bottles
you
are
wearing?
used today?
Hey,
How many plastic bottles?
I know. Hey, you know what?
I just watched that one. So.
No.
You know, it's like
I've been getting better.
it's like you take one and you go, yeah, it's fine. Sure. But
Mhm.
what about the fucking science experiment you're doing to your body every day?
Oh, right.
Because it's not just one, it's
Right.
all of the things.
Well, and that's where I have to laugh because, like, and I think I've talked to you about this. Like, I did the kind of the keto carnivore diet for a little bit, and I didn't do it for any other reason than, like, one, I have enough knowledge in that area to where I understand basically what's going, the basics of what's going on. I did it more of like, I've been eating too much processed shit. I need to go back to the basics.
Mhm.
Sometimes the easiest way is to rip the Band-Aid off and just meat.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Eliminate.
eat
Yep.
meat, and that's what it's going to be, red meat. I'm not going to get into any processed pork or any processed sausage or
Make it simple.
right. I mean, it's going to be red meat, ground burger, and steaks. Like, that's what I'm going to eat. And like, I felt amazing. And then and then you go like, oh, I'll start introducing things slowly back in, and I fell off a little bit, as far as that. But like, it's not necessarily that, oh, well, this is the best diet ever because I feel amazing. No, you got rid of all of the crap that was making you feel like shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's not necessarily that it's that amazing of a diet. It's more of you got rid of the bad stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like saying, I've gotten so much faster. Did you get faster, or did you take the weights off of the sled that was hooked up to you, and now you're not pulling as much weight behind you?
Right.
Mhm.
It's two different things.
Well, and it always seems to be the thing that we're praising is the thing that we can sell. You can't sell fruits and vegetables to people. That's not sexy, that's not popular, that's not
Mhm.
exciting, that's not whatever. So it's like every time we say eat whole natural foods, cut out processed stuff, that's not fun. It's not fun to go to the grocery store and just get apples. They don't have a cute label.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
and that's something it kind of comes to a point that I don't know that I really finished before of like, life is boring. A lot of life is boring. You're going to be bored. And you should want it to be boring. You should want monotony in your life.
Mhm.
And not because you want to be bored, but because once you get to a place to where you are bored or monotonous or whatever, you're able to see what really is important and what really is not important.
Mhm.
And too many people think that I need to be stimulated constantly, I need to be entertained constantly, I need to be doing like I fall into this too.
Yep, same.
I sit for 3 hours and I feel like I'm a lazy pile of garbage. It makes me feel like I'm a lazy pile of garbage. I know it's not necessarily true, but that's how I feel about it.
Mhm.
Now, if I was sitting for 3 hours reading a book that was expanding my mind, that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
That if I'm sitting for 3 hours scrolling on Facebook Reels or watching Big Bang Theory for the 700th frickin' time, like, that's a very different thing. Like,
Mhm.
but being bored is not a bad thing, and we have this whole mentality in our society that like you can never be bored.
Mhm.
Well, there's a reason why you are constantly under anxiety and stress, and you're constantly in your emotions. Is because you never give yourself a chance to sit,
Mhm.
be bored, understand what's going on around you, and figure out what is important, what is not important.
Yeah.
When we go up north deer hunting, one of the best weeks of my life, because while there are times in the woods that I will have a movie playing on my phone or a podcast that I'm listening to, there is almost nothing better than sitting there for 6 hours staring at the same 300 trees
Yeah.
Yep.
without a sound
Yep.
other than the squirrels running through the woods.
Yep.
That lets your mind just digest everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
it's very boring.
going back to like why we can't settle into the ways of like your grandma and getting fully fulfilled by like I'm just watching my family being here. I think it's a little bit of like kids struggle with that. Kids struggle with the like I had a kid in my class a couple weeks ago like, Miss Courtney, I'm bored with this, and I'm like, you know what? I can't wait to see what you do with that. Congratulations for being bored. I can't wait to see how you process that.
Bored with a specific movement?
We were doing something and she just wasn't into it.
Right.
And she expressed, I'm bored with this. And I'm like, that's awesome.
Yes.
You've probably never been
And
and you know what? Can't wait to see how you handle
and
that.
push past the boredom.
Yes.
And that's what nobody will
Yes.
do is they'll get bored and they'll move on to the next thing. And you know, you talked about the jack of all trades, master of none thing. Like when you push past the boredom is when you become no longer just a jack of that trade. Because you're going to find things in life that are going to be like, oh, I figured that out. Let me move on to the next thing. And that's fine if you want to learn the next thing. But then you're going to find things that's like, oh, I'm bored with this. I want to move on to the next thing, but I have to do it again tomorrow. I'm going to have to do dishes tomorrow.
Mhm.
I'm going to have to do laundry tomorrow. And that's when you have to just push a little bit farther, because then it becomes a not only, and like this is going to sound a little bit dumb, but not only did I push past the boredom of dishes, I'm actually really fucking good at washing dishes now.
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah.
as weird as it sounds, I come back around. First, I'm proud that I did the dishes because I didn't want to
Mhm.
do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's boring. And then you come back around to not only am I proud that I did the dishes, I'm proud at how well I did the dishes.
I'm the best dishwasher in
Right,
the house.
right.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
you have to push past that sometimes. There are things in your life that are going to be boring that you just got to go, okay, and
Yeah.
keep going.
Well,
And
that's
if you
where
can gamify things like that,
Yep.
Gamify,
like
exactly.
as a kid, like that's how I would have to do things, and I do it still to this day with certain things.
Mhm.
I mean, even I now know that you guys talked about competition before. Competition in my house, competition with me,
Mhm.
with my kids, with my wife,
With-
little things.
With you
or
and
some
I
of-
at work now.
Yeah, with him and I at work now. But yeah, like the dishwashing thing, like, yeah, I'm gonna wash the dishes because I can.
Mhm.
And it's not gonna bother me as much.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
And I'm also gonna do them well. I'm
Yep.
gonna make sure that nobody has to grab my dish and
Rewash
rewash
it.
it for some reason.
Yep.
I'm gonna make nobody grab a dish to put it away or use it and have to go, oh, who did this, and throw it in the. No, that's not gonna be me. Yeah. The boring thing is funny because I'm dealing with it with the kids in my house, and I'm like, just today, in fact, Rowan was talking about it. And boring. I'm bored. I said, you know what I say when you're bored, and he didn't want to admit
That's
it.
what Mom
I'm
always
not sure.
said.
I'm not sure if he actually even remembered, but it was in front of in front of my mother-in-law, and I said, only boring people get bored.
Mhm.
And he hates it, and the oldest hates it, and I can't do the next thing. They have to get old enough to understand that. They're like, yeah, only boring people get bored. Like, there is plenty to do.
Yep.
Whether it's work,
Yep.
whether it's
Yep.
play, whether it's self-reflection, whether it's, and I just tell them, twiddle your thumbs. Just learn
Well,
to
I mean,
twiddle your thumbs and get really good at that. Or do that until you can think of something else that you want to do, and
The-
just go do that.
How long did it take us to learn how to whistle like Mom and
Yeah.
Dad? To
Yep.
do,
Yep.
I saw our Uncle Kurt do the loon call,
Yeah.
and I went, I need to learn how to do that. And you spend hours trying to
I
get your
said,
hands in
today,
the right
do
spot.
this, and then learn how to do this.
And
Yeah.
I think kids nowadays need a little bit more direction of where to place that sometimes. But like for
Yeah.
the kid in my class, that she's like, Miss Courtney, I'm bored. I'm like, okay, well, we're about to move into another game. So you figure out what the rules are. You figure out what the game is. You're bored. I'm going to come to you in about 15 seconds, and you better have this whole class run of like, what are we going to do? What are the rules? What are the groups that we're
Sure.
doing it? And you're going to also learn how to teach the class of
Right.
3-year-olds. Like you're a
Right.
3-year-old,
Yeah.
but like, okay, you're bored. Let's have that boredom work into creativity and
Sure. Right.
imagination, and then productivity of
Sure.
you're going to create something else.
That's
Like-
smart. Yeah, that's smart too.
Because then you can go, okay, use
Yeah.
this to something. Use like when you're bored, turn that into something positive and like be
Yeah.
productive with it and create something
That's
else.
something I could be a little bit better about, because I'm definitely most of the time just like, dude, if you're bored, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you have a desk that's full of things
Sure.
as far as crafts or writing,
Right.
Sure.
that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
You
unfortunately,
have a bike,
like
you have
yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
toys or-
I'm in the middle of remodeling my house, so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm spending a lot of time up there, and I know that he's missing out on some of that time. But I also know that he's pretty good about being independent. I
Mhm.
mean, even when he
Oh,
gets with his cousin, I think it was day three or four of that week-long vacation where he was like, "Yo, can I go do this?" I was like, "Oh, not with them? Nah, okay, sure." Like
Yeah.
he's independent in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So I know that some of it is just attention that he's gonna need. He needs some attention from me, and
Totally.
I got to do a little bit better at that. But I also got to get that upstairs done so that it relieves a lot of tension from everything in our house.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
bigger family living in a smaller quarters. As soon as we can do that, things will be nicer.
Right.
But I know that I'm a little bit more like we'll find something to do because there's
Mhm.
plenty to do.
Mhm.
If not, just get outside because I
Mhm.
know I got plenty to do outside
Mhm.
too. But I think having that approach and maybe aiming him when he's bored every once in a while would be helpful
Just like
too.
a little nudge, like, well, what about this?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like, just kind of taking that negative, I'm bored, and then I feel like what parents maybe would typically do, or even what we do as adults, is like, you don't go, oh man, I'm bored. You just feel a little emotion, and you grab your phone, and then I'm
Yeah.
scrolling and doing something.
Yeah.
It's so
That
easy to
it's
do it with
like-
kids. It's hard to do that with adults. Because, like,
Oh,
kids,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, you're bored? I'm like, great. So you have an open mind to think about whatever you want because you're
Yeah.
not needing to focus on the tasks that we're doing in class. It's like,
Yeah.
cool. So you can think about a whole new game? Thanks. But for adults, it's like,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
It's like
Yeah.
there's some sort of opportunity in that.
Yeah.
I have just been able to find a way to just like being inside my own head.
and see that's
That
the,
has become such a tool. to me.
that's very much the thing that like I get torn because Casey kind of said it earlier too, like I hate social media but I love social media. Like I hate how much I listen to informative podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, but I love it at the same time.
Yeah.
So like I have this feeling of like the kind of the David Goggins thing, like, no, I need to be taking 3 hours a day and just conquering my own mind, but at the same time, like, am I going to be not informed tomorrow if I don't listen to
Sure.
this podcast or to that podcast or to whatever?
Or sometimes that podcast will challenge your thought process.
Exactly, or will
and go
challenge
like,
the thought process
"Oh,
you already
shit,
have.
That's not how
Or-
I would have taken that approach.
Well, and then I start to wonder, like, did it challenge my mind, my thought process, or did it create my thought process? And it's not my own actual thought process because I listened to somebody else's idea that I somewhat related to, and now I just am taking that on as my own.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening, or am I actually going, yeah, that's what I think, and I agree with this person? So it's one of those where like I have those moments where I'm like, no, I just need to turn it off for a few hours. But what am I missing? If
Do
I
you
miss
sit
something, am
and-
I going to miss out on something really important?
yeah.
You're probably not. In all honesty,
Yeah.
you're probably really not.
You're
Not on the
probab-
important
You're
things.
probably not. Or
As long as you keep coming back to it.
you're missing July 13th. You're
Yes,
giving the
but
kids a bath. And in the group message, you find out
but you were gonna find
Trump was shot at.
you were gonna find
You're
that
like,
out.
Wait, what?
Right.
Yeah, I know. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm joking a little bit. But you're gonna find that out eventually. But like, that's kind of my point. It was that I was 5 or 10 minutes late
Yeah.
to that information, that news, that text message,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was days behind.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I had to finish that bath. And like
The-
10 minutes later, then I was able to like get on Twitter really quick and scroll,
Yeah.
and see something, somewhat of what happened. I felt like I was days behind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and like
And sorry, had he been shot, I kind of would have been.
Right.
Like I would have felt way behind,
Right.
but it felt like I had
Mhm.
missed a bullet too.
Mhm.
well, and like
Mhm.
one of the first thoughts I had was similar to one of the guys that Casey and I listened to, where he was very surprised because he was at like a casino or whatever,
Mhm.
and he was like, I couldn't believe it when my phone lit up that had happened, the assassination attempt, because he was like, I looked around and it was like ESPN on this screen and CNN on this screen and whatever, and he's like, how is this not like breaking news on every single
Everything
TV
shut down
screen?
and announced
And-
over a PA system.
And it was funny because I remember Dad talking about he actually remembered when JFK was shot in first or second grade, and they announced it over the PA system at school.
Yeah. If 9/11 happened again, It would just be another
Well,
tweet.
and we weren't told
Yeah.
in middle school.
It would just
In
be
middle
a come and
school,
go.
it wasn't until you got home that your parents told you about what happened.
Mhm.
At the high school in Milton, they told the students, but
nobody, yeah,
but it's
nobody
one of those
outside
things
high
where, like,
school.
I almost feel like everybody has a cell phone. How is that not something that came out like an Amber Alert or
Yeah.
a tornado
Public service
alert
announcement.
or a
Yeah.
just the quick the big annoying
Yep.
buzz of like, hey, things are happening that
Mhm.
really affect
Mhm.
everybody's life right now. Like, how is that not the alert that went out for that type of thing? That was what surprised me about
Well,
that.
There's probably pretty good reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of good reasons for that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling raindrops and bugs.
Raindrops
Yep.
and bugs. Yeah.
Anybody
Yep.
have any last closing thoughts?
No. I just wanted to say there was a reason for that because I could launch into conspiracies next.
Yeah, right.
And you don't need to be banned.
No,
from
I think-
YouTube.
I
Your
think
31 viewers
Yeah.
appreciate your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Sometimes it's 50.
I think
sometimes
Casey hit on a point that I would say rings true for everybody. Most of the time in your life, the easiest path is going to be just going through it. Go through it. Stop trying to go around it. Stop trying to work around it. Stop trying to avoid it. Go through it. You're going to
Mhm.
find that that's
Mhm.
going to be the easiest way to do it is to, Mom and I talked about it. We were tearing apart this horse fence the other day. And I said, I'm getting to the point in my life to where what's the hardest task? Let me do that one first.
Yeah.
Because then I can coast through the easy task.
Mhm.
And I think what Casey said earlier about just go through it first. Going through is going to be easier than trying to work your way around it. The work smarter, not harder thing
Mhm.
only works in certain situations.
Cool.
Sure. I just thought it was cool that you guys wanted to do this with both parts of our family, or all your siblings, all of our siblings, if you will. So I just thought it was cool that you wanted to sit down and talk to us. I've done this a few times. Like I tried to do a podcast early on when I was out in California, and not really. I just played. I didn't really try to set up anything official. But then I participated in a couple of fantasy football podcasts, but that's all I've really been able to talk about with people. So
Yeah.
it was cool just to. It was cool to broach these subjects with you two.
Mhm.
And you two know how it is, but maybe not everybody does. When our family gets together, there are 2-3 of these type of conversations kind of happening simultaneously all at the same time. Yeah. And I remember visiting from California, a lot of times you feel like you're only giving a third of your energy to each one of those conversations and trying to have them, as many of them as possible as you can,
Mhm.
with everybody that's around
Mhm.
while you're available.
Mhm.
So I thought it was a cool idea that you guys wanted to sit down and talk with, all of us as far as siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I know we weren't able to do it the other day, but I'm glad that we were still able to make it work.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to do it again, or even do something virtually, I'd be down for it.
Yeah,
So-
if you guys can figure out a way that you if you want to do like a Zoom way or
I think we got to do it because
Google Spaces or something, like I wouldn't be opposed to jumping in once a month and just saying, hey, hi, whatever type of
Yeah.
thing. I'm sure Casey would be up for that type of thing as well.
Corey
Sure.
brought it up too. We're like, we got to do a full family thing every once in a while because I think
Yeah,
that'd be
we
cool
could.
to,
Yeah.
that'd be
like each
Yeah.
individual person and then throwing everybody on. I think it'd still be cool. Do you guys
If-
do a
like
fantasy
November.
If it's
football
something you
podcast?
guys wanted to do, yeah.
like the night of November 5th.
Remember,
be fun.
remember.
That would be fun. Corey would be very quiet.
He'd
Yeah.
be smirking the whole time, but he'd be quiet. Yeah.
But thank you both for doing it.
Yeah.
Taking the
No
time
problem.
to do
Thank you.
it away from
Cool.
your
Thank you for the invite.
All right. See you later.
So